There we go. All right, three, two, and one. Well, Mayor Brent, welcome back to Mayor's Monday here at WSAU, WSAU.com. Welcome to 2023. Haven't had a chance to catch up with you just yet. Do you have a new office in the background? You've got a very is that custard or a cheesecake palette back there? Shade of yellow.
It may just be off-white.
Off-white, okay.
In the city council chambers, I think it's overdue for an upgrade. But yeah, it's soft on the eyes, I guess. So
Yeah. For all the time that you spend in there, you've got to have something that's easy on the eyes, right?
Sure.
Obviously city upgrades, something that is constantly on your mind. And you were just telling me before we started here, you're able to get a couple of significant ones through here for the new year. The first one is probably going to catch a lot of attention is a couple of school resource officers that you're adding to the police staff. Tell us about this addition.
Yeah, this was a request that was initiated really by parents in the community who rightfully so, have put a lot of time into looking at security needs within the school. And, unfortunately, we live in a scary world where you hope that that's never necessary, that you would need a school resource officer for serious acts of violence. But, those concerns are legitimately out there, and the city heard those parents and also heard from school administration and their willingness. We have very good partnership with the Mosinee School District and their willingness to substantially contribute to the cost of having additional school resource officers within the school. The Mosinee School District is largely, comprised of an elementary, middle, and high school. And we currently have one school resource officer that for a number of years has had to cover all of those buildings, and it's a lot of students for one officer. And so in the budget process this year, the city council, together with partnership from the school district, approved hiring 3 additional officers. 2 of those officers will be school resource officers that will be covering the 2 additional buildings in the school with the 1 officer that's already there. So every building in the Mosinee School District will have its own dedicated resource officer. And that is a cost that's shared by the school district entirely, not just taxpayers in the city, because Mosinee School District comprises obviously jurisdictions beyond the city of Mosinee. And then during the summer months, that officer is obviously able to help here when other officers have vacations and can cut down on overtime. And then during those summer months, that's a cost that's borne entirely by the city because they're dedicated to the city business. And then one of those 3 new hires will be going onto the street to join our staff there, because the city has just, if you look at FBI recommendations and compared to population, the city, and this is not abnormal from other small communities that are struggling to find officers, is under recommendations. I mean, it's a fact of life. And we've had turnover as some officers have moved on to other opportunities, so you have to fill those positions, and it's tough. But we are going to add another officer to the street, and I think this was just well received by everybody. I like to run a tight ship, and I always, my goal is always no property tax increase, live within our means. However, when it comes to public safety, especially like this, that's one area where I hear from people that they don't mind paying a little more in property tax when it comes to public safety. And those are concerns we addressed this year in the budget. So that made the budget tough because we also have other priorities outside of public safety. But and we were also going through a reassessment this year. What some folks may not understand is that by state law, when our valuations are too far out of whack, so to speak, with fair market value, we have to reassess, right? And get those within a certain percentage. And it was by state law, we were mandated to do that this year. So property values have increased, and that can result in, unfortunately, a bigger tax bill as well. So I would say it was one of my toughest budgets to get through in the time I've been here. So when we do it we're on an annual budget cycle every year. So,
Mhm.
but I was also happy with everything that we were able to tackle, but it means making sacrifices. Obviously, we won't be doing a lot of street work this year because of the other things we spent money on, but we are planning on doing a lot of street work in the 2024 budget. We have a cost share program with the state is contributing 80% of project costs to redo a main section of street that's traveled every day during the school year by a lot of traffic. That it's Main Street that goes to the school. So that's going to be redone, but on those larger projects, we have to go out for bonding. And when you go out for bonding, because you're going to spend a lot of money on the actual bonding cost, it's a good time to tackle other projects and rope it into that bonding. So we're going to be looking to do other smaller street projects with that financing in 2024. So I just, ask residents in the city to be patient. We have a lot of streets that need work. Mine included is in rough shape, but I can assure people it's nowhere near on the list in my tenure to get addressed, and I just have to live with it. But we're going to do what we can to get some of those really bad ones addressed.
Yeah, indeed. So there's a couple of things in there that the city is looking to improve, and I think the school resource officers probably, obviously, as you mentioned, for good reason, at the top of the list that people are most interested in. I always think with school resource officers, it's most of their most importance, obviously, keeping the kids safe while they're in school in case the unspeakable or unthinkable happens. But they also have a pretty big job of making sure that for a lot of kids, that might be their first interaction with a police officer, and making sure that that's a positive experience, that they realize that officers are like that aren't just there for when the absolute worst happens, that they are there to serve a community and serve a community well. And obviously that's the job of the school resource officer as well.
Yeah, that's a good point I meant to mention and forgot to is, the school resource officer has a lot of value beyond just, being there in the event of tragedy. And the school resource officer serves a very good public relations role. It's an opportunity also for that school resource officer to build relationships with students. And, we heard stories from parents who were here to advocate for expanding the resources, stories of kids who, may have been headed down the wrong path. And thanks to that school resource officer relationship, changed their life around. And so there is, teachers obviously add tremendous value to, students' development, but so does a school resource officer. And so that's now an added benefit that we're timesing by 3 within our small school district. And I think everybody that's a taxpayer should feel very good about that.
Yeah, and a growing community as well. Obviously, you've got some economic development going on, most significantly a new hotel. You're looking at adding jobs, adding residents to your community. You're constantly looking at that. So having a police department that keeps up like that is part of those growing pains. And obviously that's something that you set out to tackle early before it does become a problem with those hires.
Right. As I mentioned, one additional officer is going on the street, and we could use more. And you mentioned the hotel and the growth. Our community has experienced considerable growth. Our population percentage growth rate of growth has outpaced actually Marathon County as a whole, and even the state of Wisconsin as a whole. So we are one of those communities in central Wisconsin that is growing at a steady pace. And that's, we've added quite a bit of multifamily development on the residential side, and we've added where we can single family housing development, and that's just increased our population. And then we've developed considerably. I mean, you look at the Central Wisconsin Business Park. Over the time I've been here, we've seen a considerable expansion by Aero Global, Greenheck, new additions by Transport Refrigeration, Wisconsin Mechanical Solutions, additions by Crystal Finishing. And then you look at downtown, and we've added a Mexican restaurant. We have a new 4-story hotel coming. Those all put demands on public safety, including fire and EMS, and police. And with as population grows, so do problems that you just have to address, since the fact of life, that call upon public safety. So we have to remember that when it comes to investing, that we got to expand those resources as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you mentioned, a lot of residents really happy to see that, and again, see it before it becomes a problem, because we're seeing at least one local community that is going to referendum because they need to expand their public safety forces, ambulance and EMS like that significantly. So they're needing to ask the taxpayers to kind of bear some of that burden.
Right. And, if you ask, and I've talked obviously with police officers from different departments. I used to vice chair the public safety committee for Marathon County when I served on the board. And we have obviously our own police department here. And police officers will tell you that if there's one thing they spend a significant amount of their time and resource on, is mental health. And, obviously you're going to see a lot of that within a school district and even within the community. And when they have a mental health case, that can suck up an entire shift, dealing with somebody that may need to be transported. And it's just a burden that continues to grow within our community and all communities. And it puts another demand on those public safety resources that we're the government, and we're the one that funds those and has to respond and keep our community safe for everybody else. And it's just it gets increasingly difficult in these small communities to find the resources to do it all, which is why, as I mentioned, as we go through budget cycles, you're never going to see a budget where you do it all, where you tackle streets, where you tackle public safety, where you tackle fire and EMS, where you tackle cost of living is going up for everybody. We have demands by staff outside of public safety, rightfully so, for comparable wage increases. You just feel like some days you can't compete on all levels, but you have to step back and take a deep breath, get through that budget, pick a priority and go with it. And that's what we did this year.
Mm-hmm. Before we let you go, then give us an idea where we're at with the new Cobblestone Hotel near downtown there. I know you got a chance to tour the facility recently. What's it looking like?
Yeah, I took a tour this morning, and even all the way up to I got on the roof. That was pretty neat. But they're coming along very good, and it's been a great public-private partnership that I think is going to bring in some tremendous tax revenue for the city, ultimately, room tax, property tax, economic activity by bringing more people into this community who are traveling and visiting, and couldn't be happier. But I toured that this morning, and I'm not going to commit them to you always get nervous when you talk about when the doors are going to open, but it sounds like anywhere between the middle of May and the middle of June you could see doors open there. They're operating in an environment of construction and delayed supply chains, and I think they're waiting on an elevator, and you got to have the elevator, and that's so that's one thing that might set it back a little bit, but they seem to be on good pace to open soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you're going to facilitate the big ribbon cutting for the facility then at some point this summer?
Yep, you bet. We can't wait to do it. I was there for the groundbreaking, and I'll be there for the ribbon cutting. So
Absolutely. Well, hey, we will try our best to be there as well. Well, Brent, we always appreciate the time, and we'll look forward to chatting again later this summer.
all right, fantastic. Thanks a lot, Mike.